Hello Star Trek fans, my name is Christopher D. Abbott. Thank you so much for coming to my channel and watching my video. If you like my content, please hit the subscribe button for me. Thank you so much. So, interestingly enough, in the Picard series, it's set in 2399. It's set 20 years after the end of Star Trek Nemesis, so that's the gap in time. And in 2399, Jean Luc Picard is 94 years of age. He was born on the 13th of July 2305 to Maurice and Yvette Picard and Libert France. So that's the timeline from that, which is kind of incredible. He failed his first entry exam into Starfleet, and he passed on his second attempt, which was 2323. He studied archaeology with a Professor Richard Galen, and that is the name of the character that he assumes in the episode Gambit Part 1 and Part 2, where he infiltrates this sort of gang of criminals, and he's one of them. Interestingly, Robin Curtis starred in that episode, and she plays a Romulan, which was kind of interesting because the character of Sabak, of course, which she played in Star Trek 3 and 4, was half Romulan. So I thought that was interesting, and they gave her like the bumps on the forehead and stuff. So he won the Starfleet Academy Marathon in his first year at the Academy, and then just before he graduated in 2327, he was stabbed through the heart by a Nausicaan with a very sharpy blade. And that is the reason why he now has a artificial heart. His first posting was to the USS Reliant, which, again, throwback to the early Star Treks from the Reliant, Star Trek 2. And he attended Spock's wedding around that time, which one assumes would probably be Spock and Sabak. That's my understanding, but I don't know. If you know the real details of that, put it in the comments. That would be awesome for me. He became the helmsman of the USS Stargazer and assumed command of it in 2333, and he served for 22 years until 2355 at the Battle of Maxia. He saved the ship, or actually he lost the ship, but he won the fight with what they didn't know then, but we know now was the Ferengi. And he created the Picard maneuver, which is this kind of weird thing where the ship goes into warp very quickly and then sort of stops, and so it looks like it's in two places at once, and you know they fire on the wrong one, and you get the picture. He was assigned the Enterprise D in 2364. Which he commanded for 7 years until Deanna Troi crashed it into a planet. And I'm sorry, Deanna Troi fans, but she did steer the ship into the planet. So he was assigned command of the Enterprise E in 2372. So by this time, he's getting on a bit. I mean, now I know he's 94 now. Like he's getting a retirement age. I don't know how old Captain Kirk was when he ended up in the ribbon and falling off of a cliff, but Captain Picard is getting there, right? So once he got the Enterprise E, that was 2372 to 2379 was Nemesis, right? So that was quite a few years as the Enterprise E captain. I mean, in that time he did stuff. Of course, he stopped the Borg from assimilating Earth the day before First Contact Day in April 2063. But off-screen, he's promoted to Admiral in 2385, which means that he was the captain of the Enterprise E far longer than the captain of the Enterprise D. Well, because Deanna Troi crashed into a planet. But he was obviously, he served for quite some time on the Stargazer too. So he's had quite a few assignments, but he's had some pretty long ones too. But I guess he got promoted in 2385, and that was at in response to the Huber supernova, of course, as we know, from the 2009 film, or J.J. Abrams' film, where they create this whole new timeline with Spock going back in time and Nero and all that. And I know that there's a lot of fans out there that don't care for the new films and so on, but I do. I like them. I like all Star Trek stuff. I don't have any ill feeling towards any of it. There are some episodes that I skip, but it's Star Trek and I love it. So anyway, moving on. So Captain or Admiral Jean Luc Picard, as we know at that point, is now running this big armada of ships that are going to go and help the Romulans to relocate, because millions of them have been killed by the supernova, and Romulus has been destroyed, and I'm assuming Remus too, and whatever other planets there are in that area. And we know that the Utopia Planitia shipyards were supposedly building new ships to help with this effort, but then there was an attack on Mars by what they are calling or naming as synthetics, androids I guess, which left 92,000 people dead. And I believe that the entire Utopia Planitia shipyards themselves were destroyed, which effectively ended Starfleet's response efforts. And Jean-Luc Picard, in a fit of anger, or whatever you want to call it, he is, in his own words, he was nursing his dignity. But whatever the reason, Jean-Luc Picard resigned from Starfleet in protest over those efforts. And that then leaves us with 14 years between that event and Picard, the series Picard, right? So we are now fully up to date on that. I like the concept of having a big gap that they can fill with information. I also like the fact that there is stories to be told from 2379, which is essentially the screen ending of Star Trek The Next Generation, because that's really much where it did end. And then of course we know that between 2379 and 2385 we have the events of what basically became the J.J. Abrams version of Star Trek, where the supernova happened and so on. And I like the fact that our prime time, as it's called, the prime timeline, continues on, and the effects of the changes in the timeline don't seem to affect this prime universe, which is pretty cool. Very happy with the theme of and the feel of this new show. A little bit darker, a little bit grittier. I think that's nice because it really matches with the new style of what we're seeing from Star Trek. I know that there's a lot of fans out there that don't care for Discovery, and I like that series too. So I'm an all-round Star Trek guy. I can't help that. So I like the fact that they're taking elements of that series into this one, and I think that that's going to be really cool. And of course, I love the fact that they have got some cameos and some guest stars that are important. Brent Spiner back as Data, but in a good way, not undoing his sacrifice, not undoing Data's sacrifice. I think that was the key point that Brent Spiner wanted. He did not want Data's sacrifice to be undone. So that was a very interesting way of bringing him back in the dream sequences and so on, which was pretty cool. And the first sequence, I think, of this series, the first episode, you see this ship, the Enterprise D, and then when they go into 10 Forward, Data is playing cards with Picard, but Data is in the wrong uniform, and I thought to myself, well, that's weird. It's not the right uniform. They must have made a mistake. But then, of course, it occurred to me this is a dream sequence, so there is no reality. And of course, the last time Picard saw Data, he was wearing that uniform. So I think that was all part of the dream idea and sequences, which is pretty good. Jonathan D'Arco back as Hugh, brilliant. Looking forward to seeing a lot more about him. Not many people know that he was actually in Star Trek Voyager too. He had one episode of Star Trek Voyager. The name of the episode escapes me. I can't remember it. Put it in the comments. But he played a character called Fantomi. He was named by the Doctor. He didn't speak in it because they could only communicate with the music and lights and stuff. But it was pretty cool that I found out later on that he was actually guest starring in that. So Jerry Ryan, 7 of 9, one of my favourite characters from Voyager. So excited to see her back. And I'm very happy that she's not wearing a cat suit, a spray-on suit. She looks like she's wearing regular clothes. Oh, that was another thing. Just came to me. The clothing that they're wearing, it's all like normal clothes, even now. I know that Gene Roddenberry had this vision that there were no zippers in the future, but I like what they've done with these wardrobe. So anyway, that was one thing. Just wanted to point out a couple of books. This one here, Death in Winter, Starship Next Generation book by Michael Jan Friedman. This is a very good book if you want to have a little bit of a sort of a backstory of Captain Picard and Beverly Crusher, a little bit of a love story going on there. But also this is set just after Nemesis, so this does fill in a little bit of information. It is the sequel to a it comes off the back of a reunion book that he wrote, so there are some characters in there. So you in isolation you might find there are some characters you're not sure about. And moving off screen for a second, this is another one that I absolutely adore. This is another book which gives a bit more history of Jean Luc Picard in a time when he's not captain, but sets up that time when he becomes captain. Highly recommend these books if you haven't read them. Again, this is written by Michael Jan Friedman as well, and I think that these two books will give you a bit more background to the Captain Picard legacy and story. So I hope you enjoyed my presentation, and if you liked it, please subscribe. And if you want to hear anything, or you want me to give you any more information, or there's stuff that you think I've got wrong, put it in the comments, and I can learn from that too. So thank you very much, and keep trekking.